Hello, welcome to another video. There was a video before this one and there's going to be another one after it. Today's video is going to be about some crazy people I've met. So I have been institutionalized multiple times, like at psychiatric hospitals, and obviously in those places you're surrounded by crazy people. But today's not going to be about those. Today is going to be about the people I've met out in public. And one of them is actually, I think, the most interesting story, is somebody that I met online. So, living in my car, I'm not exactly like extroverted or anything. I don't seek out to talk to other people very often. But sometimes, because I live in public, people approach me. And they'll want to talk to me about things. And I think it's good for me to be in the right place at the right time for somebody, to just be a listening ear to them, because some people, they really just they don't have anybody in their life to talk to. They don't feel comfortable talking to the camera, they can't afford, or they don't have a therapist, or maybe there's some kind of stigma in their culture about it, right? And some people really just need a complete stranger that's not going to judge them, interrupt them, or say anything, or try to even give advice, to just listen to their woes, right? Another living creature that can hear and understand them and isn't gonna like do anything about what they're saying. And that's me. I am perfect for that, because I can sit here and listen to you ramble about anything for as long as you need. I might get a little bit bored. I have gotten a little bit bored when these people start talking to me sometimes, but you know, I just pull out a cigarette, I just smoke a cigarette, and I just listen with interest. So this first one, I was 19 or 20 years old, living in California in my car, and I was outside a laundromat waiting for my laundry. And this woman comes up to me and asks me for a cigarette. I was sitting in my driver's seat right here, and she asked me for a cigarette. So I gave her one, and she spent the next 40 minutes talking about her family drama, and I couldn't comprehend much of what she was saying. I couldn't put together a timeline. You know, she didn't really name any of the characters or anything, but I could tell that it was clear by the way she was talking that the intention was not for me to understand what she was saying and to comprehend it and put a timeline together. The intention was just for me to sit there and listen. So I did. She talked about like family drama. She talked about like her brother having cancer, and some kind of stuff about like people aren't taking him seriously, and she's the only one taking him seriously, but he doesn't take her seriously, and like all of this stuff about like she's just so stressed out and she just hates her life so much and she feels like she's gonna have a nervous breakdown. And I was just sitting there like, yeah, wow, oh wow, that sucks, wow, oh my god, wow. That's all I said, really. And I just kept handing her cigarette after cigarette, and she kept lighting them and smoking them for about 40 minutes, talking about this stuff. And my laundry was done probably like 5 minutes into this, but I wasn't about to be rude. She really needed somebody to talk to. There's also people that scream in the middle of the night. And personally, I've had breakdowns where I've screamed really, really loud, multiple throughout my life, and usually there's people around. I'm in a situation where I'm overwhelmed, my senses are overwhelmed, my mind is overwhelmed, my emotions are overwhelmed, and I just have an autistic meltdown is what it's called. I've had many of these throughout my life, so I'm no stranger to just screaming at bad times or in public or around people. But living in parking lots, sometimes people scream and you hear them. People get into fights in the parking lots, people get into, arguments with police in the parking lots, and then people just on their own in the middle of the night will have a mental breakdown and scream about how much their life sucks. And whenever I hear this, I try to look for the person. If I can see them, I'll just silently observe. No judgment, because again, I've been there, I know. I'm not going to judge people for that. They're not hurting me in any way. All they're doing is screaming some distance away from me. And I just try to make sure that they're not going to hurt themselves, or that there's no, weapons, there's no physical fight involved. And if it's just somebody having a breakdown, I'll just keep my distance. And those people have never approached me in the middle of a breakdown. Um, so that happens. That's happened like multiple times where I just heard random screaming, while I'm in a parking lot trying to sleep or trying to relax for the night or something. Now, one of these occurrences that made me a little bit uncomfortable was this elderly guy. He was like, not like super old or anything, but probably in his 60s, 70s. And he would come up to my car and talk to me and like lean on my car, lean into my window and everything and talk to me. And he always wore a Speedo. Now, he always met me at, he met me twice at 2 different locations. The first time was at a park that has a lake and like a beach and everything, so the Speedo didn't confuse me. That's normal to wear that kind of thing at the park with the lake where you go swimming. So I wasn't really, put off by it. But he did come up to my car and he leaned on the hood of my car in such a way that the Speedo was like hidden behind my rear view mirror. And so he just looked naked for the whole conversation. And he was telling me about, his, what he does with his time. And he's like, yeah, I get lonely, so I just drive around. I just cruise around in my car, in my Speedo. And if you don't know what a Speedo is, by the way, it's like really tight, small, swimming underwear for men. So imagine this old guy wearing like panties, basically. And yeah, I was a little, I didn't know what to say to him. Most of the time I don't know how to make conversation with people like this because he just kept going. He just kept saying things even if I wasn't responding, and I was just like, maybe this guy really is lonely and I'm like the only person he's gonna talk to for the next week or whatever. I might as well be here for that. And then he meets me at a different park completely across town, like several miles away, and he comes up to me. He's like, I thought I recognized your car. I always see you down at the other park, and that's crazy you're here. This is like on my cruising route. I always cruise by here. And the way he was saying cruising, by the way, I'm not sure he understood the implication, because cruising means something else, as well as just sitting in your car riding around. It also means public sex. So he kept talking about cruising while he's in this Speedo, and I'm like, okay. But then he meets me at the second park where there's no swimming. There was a public pool adjacent to the park, but he didn't seem interested in that. He didn't talk about it at all. He didn't say he was there for it. He just said he's cruising around. And at this point, because he's showing no interest whatsoever in swimming or tanning or anything like that, but he's still wearing this Speedo, trying to lean up against my car and get even closer to me this time, and he's talking about cruising so much, I started to get a little uncomfortable. I was like, is this guy just obnoxious, or is he trying to hit on me? Like, what's happening here? And I just kept my distance as much as I could, verbally, facial expressions. I just was like, just tried to really express that I have no interest in this interaction whatsoever, without being rude or like saying that I have to leave, because I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go anywhere. I wanted to stay at that park and have my alone time in my car where I'm alone and nobody bothers me. But this guy, he just came up, and eventually he left, but he was talking about, I'm so lonely, I have so much money, I have such a big house and it's all empty. My big house is empty and I don't know what to do with all my money, and so I just spend my days cruising. And I'm like, I really do not to this day know if he knows what that means and he was actually doing that, or if he's just completely oblivious and he's just a lonely old man that drives around in a Speedo. No way to tell. And after that, never saw him again. So a little more recently, there was a guy that came up to me. I was sitting in the back of my car on my computer, and my car was on. And I could see sort of just a little peek of this guy sitting in the parking lot off to the side of my car, and I could see him sort of looking at my car. I think he saw that it was on, and he saw that nobody was in the driver's seat, and he started thinking about trying to steal from the car. And so eventually I got in the front seat. I wasn't worried or threatened by him because I was in the car and I knew he was there. But I could see that he was like eyeing my car. And so I got in the driver's seat, and after a few minutes, he did actually approach me, and he was like, "Oh, wow, you're actually in here, okay," because I didn't think anybody was in this car. And I was like, yeah, I live in my car. I was just sitting in the back. And he kind of peeked in, he looked, he was like, "Oh, you have a cot and everything, you've got all your stuff." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "That's cool." And then he launched into some other stuff about like, "Oh, I'm just here to get some snacks, but I kind of don't want to go in, and I just had an argument with my family, and like, I'm just sort of here now." And he seemed really like confused and directionless, and like he didn't know if he wanted to actually talk to me or not. So I rolled myself a cigarette, and I offered him a cigarette. I said, "Do you smoke?" And he saw the cigarette in my hand, and like a switch flipped, and he started talking about evil. He started talking about the devil. He pulled a cigarette box out of his pocket and pulled the cigarette out and started like playing with them and moving them around, but he didn't put it in his mouth, and he didn't start smoking it until much later. But he was just going on this like, not really a rant, but just really like mumbling almost about like evil and the devil and God and how he needs to be righteous, and he used to say Bible verses and stuff. And I was like, okay, he's one of those. Like, I've interacted with people like this in the hospital before. He's having some kind of complex, interconnected thoughts that are themed around religion. Presumably, he grew up religious, and he thinks that smoking is like a really bad thing, and he probably heavily judges himself. I've met schizophrenic people that were religious, that believed in God and believed the voices they were hearing were like angels and devils. And I suspected this was similar to his experience in this moment. I didn't know if he was like hearing voices or if he was just having delusions and paranoia, but he was talking a lot about stuff that I've never read the Bible, not all the way through anyway. So I didn't really understand what he was saying, and I was just like, "Sorry, bro, I just wanted to give you a cigarette, like if you wanted to smoke." But he kept going, and it went on for like 10-15 minutes. Eventually I offered him a cookie because I had cookies. I was snacking on cookies, and he had said that he came here to this place to get a snack, but he didn't end up getting a snack. And it was like almost 1 a.m. So I was like, "Are you hungry, bro? Do you want a cookie?" And he said no. Immediate, no hesitation whatsoever, no. Looked me dead in the eyes, no. And I was like, "Okay, bro, you don't have to have a cookie." And he, like a couple minutes later, he was like, "I don't mean to offend you, sir, but with the cookie thing, that kind of freaked me out. Like, are you gay?" I didn't know how to, I just laughed. I was like, "No, I'm not gay. I just wanted to see if you wanted a snack, bro. I wanted to offer a snack because you said you came here to eat food and you didn't have any, so I thought maybe you were hungry. I was just trying to be nice." So this guy was so paranoid about sin, probably, and he thought that me trying to offer him a snack and be nice to him was me like hitting on him because I'm gay or whatever, trying to lure him into sin. Honestly, maybe he was gay and he was like fighting with those feelings, and he had some kind of like internalized homophobia about it. A lot of people do go through that. So eventually he actually made me pull up a video on my phone. He was like, look this up, and it was an interview with some guy that had some kind of prophetic dream about God judging people and sending them to hell or heaven. And he was like very passionate about it. There was this like really emotional music over it. Not really the kind of video that I would tend to watch. But as the video was playing, he started walking away, and he was like, "All right, bro, I'll see you later. You know, have a good night." And like, what do you think about the video? Before he was leaving, and then he turned around, he's like, "What do you think about the video?" And I said something like, "Well, I'm gonna finish it because this guy's clearly passionate about his experience, and I'm curious what he has to say." And the dude was like, "That's real shit." And then he left, and I never saw him again. And I did watch the video. I did watch it. It was just this guy relaying this dream that he had. And I do have an interest in dreams, so it's not like I was completely lying or anything, but I'm not a religious person, so it didn't hit me the same way. But I think about people like that, people like that are really out there, that have some kind of like internal judgment system that keeps them so scared of like everything they do. Like, dude couldn't even smoke a cigarette without going into this like mental state where he's judging himself and he feels like God is staring down at him like, don't smoke that fucking cigarette. It's like, I don't know how you live like that. That's gotta be crazy. That's gotta be exhausting. And at some point he did say, don't judge me as crazy for saying all of this stuff. And I was like, no, dude, like, this is probably the most words that I spoke to him at once during this entire interaction. But I said, basically, I've talked to crazy people. I've talked to people who are bipolar, borderline, schizophrenic. I've been friends with these people. I've talked to people with paranoid delusions, people with religious trauma. I've talked to all kinds of people, and do not judge. I have my own craziness, so if you need to stand here and talk at me and process whatever's going on in your mind, I'm here for you. I will listen until you decide to leave. And he didn't say thank you or anything. He just kind of looked at me with this really respectful look. And then he went right back into talking about whatever he was talking about, religion and God and devil and all this stuff. And then after that, he told me to pull up the video. So that was an interesting experience, and I don't know if I helped that guy at all. He did seem very agitated before, and then he seemed a lot more calm and confident afterwards. I didn't, try to get him out of his delusions or anything, but I also didn't feed into them. I just sat and listened and said, I'm not going to judge you for whatever you have to say. And I think, for a person that felt so judged, I think that was a really important thing to hear. So now, this is the most interesting one, and I kind of feel a little bit bad about telling this story, but it is really funny. I'm not going to give out any names. So, this happened online. I witnessed a mental breakdown in real time online through Discord. I spend a lot of time on Discord talking to people, random people, and my friends and things. And I got invited to this Discord server that was supposed to be like a small group chat for, the girl that invited me, she said it was she invites all the cool people she knows, all the people that prove that they're really cool. And so she invited me, and I was like, awesome. I thought, she was the leader or the one that made the group chat, but she was just like another member. And there was like maybe about 25 to 30 people in there. And, I started mingling, I started talking to people, I posted a couple selfies, and then this girl that invited me, she's flirting with me in the group chat. And I'm like, okay, cool. I don't mind that at all. She's saying that my selfies are cute, and that I'm funny and all of this stuff. And then she DMs me, and I'm like, okay, we're stepping forward here, something's happening here. She DMs me, flirts a little more, and then almost immediately she starts saying how pissed she is at her husband. And at that point I'm like, okay, 5 massive steps back. What do you mean husband? What do you mean by husband? So at this point the flirting is over, and I'm just sort of like, okay, she's having a bad day, and I guess she was flirting with me to relieve some tension or whatever. But I'm not gonna flirt anymore because she has a fucking husband. I'm not gonna do that. But I'll let her keep talking and see what she has to say. I'm interested in what's happening. So she starts talking about her husband and how he's abusive and controlling and how he hits her and he doesn't let their son do anything that he wants to do, and he doesn't let her do anything she wants to do, and she really wants to leave him. And I was like, okay, just trying to be sympathetic but neutral. And then out of nowhere, she says, I'm so angry at him, I am going to shit on his chest. He's asleep on the couch right now. I'm gonna shit on his chest. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea. Like, I don't know if you should do that. Trying to discourage her from shitting on her husband's chest. And here's the thing. when somebody gets shit, like actual feces involved, they are crazy. Like, she was either pushed really hard to that point, which I would believe, or she was just straight up crazy and having some kind of breakdown. People don't play with poop like that unless they have a fetish. People don't, in anger, play with poop like that. Like, if you get so angry at somebody that your thought is, I want to desecrate them with my feces, that's another level. That's another level of crazy, okay? People that get poop involved, stay far away from those people. So I'm like trying to discourage her from this. I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea, but I'm just speaking to her over text. There's nothing I can really do to stop her. And so like 10 minutes pass and I'm like, oh my God, what is she doing? Is she actually doing this? Like, what's happening? She comes back. She says, I did it. I shit on his chest. She sends me a full frontal nude, deletes it, blocks me. So I go into the group chat and I'm like, hey, does anybody know what's going on with this girl? Because she just said some really concerning things in DMs with me, and I just want to see, I just want to check on her. But she blocked me, so I can't talk to her anymore, and I don't know what's happening. I think she's having some kind of mental breakdown. And every single person in there, keep in mind, I was mingling. These people were talking to me. They ignored me. They acted like I didn't exist. So I just left. I was like, I don't know what just happened. I hope she's gonna be okay. I don't know if she actually did what she said she did, and I really hope not, because I mean, even if the man was like beating her, I don't think pooping on his chest is gonna help the situation. He's probably gonna be real angry about that, right? Not the best idea. But when people get to that sort of breaking point, to the point where they're willing to use shit, to smear shit on somebody, to physically contact someone else with their own shit, that is a desperate mental state. That's like I said, that's another level. So I was witness to that, I guess. So anyway, there's a lot more people I could talk about. I could talk about the people that I met in transitional housing, like my roommate who was schizophrenic, and he heard voices, and every morning at 6 a.m. he would take a shower and scream at the top of his lungs, why God, why me, why did you do this to me, etc., etc. And he was really loud too. Really frustrating to live with somebody like that, but it happens. And again, if you end up in a place where there's like a lot of crazy people around, they're gonna act crazy. You're gonna be witness to some really crazy stuff. And it's not like I've never been crazy. I mean, I could talk about some of the breakdowns I've had and some of like the worst days I've had, and maybe I will in another video if you guys are interested in that. But today's video is just about people that I sort of met like out in the public at random times, during times you would think you wouldn't, everybody around you seems normal, but there's just this one person that comes up and does something kind of crazy. So yeah, like the video if you liked it, sub to the channel if you want to see more of this. Comment, has anything like this happened to you before? Have you ever been approached by people like this, and have you been their listening ear or their non-judgmental ear? Have you seen anybody like that online? And if you're interested, let me know if you're interested in another video talking about like my time in the hospital and whatnot. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and have a peaceful day.